I hate that little recording in progress. Anyway, hello and welcome to the channel. It's Questy here, Quest for Metal, and I'm joined by Skeletor himself, Metal Trenches. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. It's funny that you should say that too, because I was saying if I had a ton of money, I would totally go the VTuber route and have like a sweet like Skeletor avatar that's fully articulated and a throne of bones and everything.
Hell yeah,
That'd
like
be
a
sick.
skull throne. That would be sick. Yeah.
Yeah, it would be awesome. But yeah, as of right now, you can just find my ugly mug over at the Metal Trenches channel for plenty of other video content. But yeah, what are we doing today?
So, like Metal Trenches says, I'll put his link down below so you can go check him out. Today we are talking about bands who are kind of underrated, bands who should be a lot bigger in our opinions than they are. So they don't necessarily have to be so underground cult, bands. These can be bands which some people do know, but we think they should be way bigger, maybe like headlining stages or just bigger in general. We want them to get the publicity, and we want them to get more people into the band. So we're going to get Metal Trenches to start off with his number 5. We're going to do 5 each and go from, did you do it in order or was it just 5, you think?
Kind of, sort of, not really. I tried to like have it start with a big one and end with a really big one, but
Okay,
not particularly in order. But yeah, so kicking things off, this is one I've been talking about for years now at this point, and that is Moore's Principium Est.
Yes.
So if you ask me, this is like the most underlooked melodic death metal band. They're out of Finland. I think they should be just as big as like In Flames, Dark Tranquility, like all those headliner names you think of, Soilwork. They should be right up there. Yeah, they should be right up there alongside. I know they came along a little bit later, but they have 7 albums and they're so good. Like they don't really have a bad album. And honestly, their latest one, 7, that I reviewed last year, is one of their best, I think. And they're just killing it. It's funny too, because they just like, I guess they just lost their entire lineup again, but the upside is I think they picked up some of the members from the Unborn era, which is awesome, because they made some great work on that album. But yeah, they are just like, for whatever reason, they just don't get the traction, despite like I see them getting coverage, but even when I put up content about them or I see other articles about them, they just never like seem to quite get their due.
Do you think it's because of the name?
Maybe that's part of it. I guess it is kind of like it is a little, yeah, it's hard to say. It's a little weird. I don't really know what it means, honestly, either. I've never looked into it.
You got In Flames at the gates, and then Moore's Principium Est. It's like, what?
Yeah, that's true. I never really thought about it, but yeah, maybe they just need that punchier name. Maybe it's time.
Like Wolfheart, I think they're a Finnish melodic death metal band, and they got a catchy name, Wolfheart. That's easy to remember. I could type that in. That's another band I could have put on this list because they're pretty underrated as well. But
yeah, I would agree.
I guess, yeah, I agree with that one. Actually, I really love them. The latest album, which has a skeleton on, I'm pretty sure. We're holding like a globe. Yeah, that's why you like it. The skeleton.
Yeah, I was on the cover. What am I gonna say?
Exactly.
You caught me.
All right, I guess I'll go with my number 5. So I'm gonna go with, I never know how to say this, Odin Organ or Odin Organ. I can't remember. I think it's Odin Organ. I always messed it up.
I can't remember which way it goes either.
I love these guys. I saw these guys back about 5 years ago at Bloodstock whenever they played. I think Blind Guardian was on the same set list. And I never heard of them before until I saw them live, and they fucking killed it. Like the energy, everyone was singing along, and it wasn't a headline, it wasn't a sub-headline, it wasn't even close to being near the evening. It was like one of the first bands on the stage, and they killed it and they nailed it, and the atmosphere was great. Everyone was singing along. They have so many chanty songs, sing-alongable songs, and the solos are just as good as Blind Guardian and Iced Earth and some of the other, big power metal bands. I think because they have a lot of albums as well, and the latest one this year, Final Days, has so many just sing-alongable songs on. I think they should be higher on people's radar. I think more people should enjoy them because they are in that same level as Blind Guardian, where everyone can have fun, drink, and sing along to these cheesy songs. And I enjoy that kind of stuff. And I think these do it well without going too far. I don't think they go too far. but I think they deserve more recognition. So yeah, Ordinogan. I think for Ordinogan, that's my pick.
Yeah,
For my
I've seen you and Jamie singing their praises quite a bit. Obviously, not necessarily my style because I'm not a huge power metal guy, but I've I can certainly kind of relate with the way that you're describing it. They've been around for a while too.
They've
right?
had a lot of albums, yeah. So they need to be big and higher on the list. And this is obviously talking about if you're a power metal fan. I think they should be higher. Obviously, if you don't like the genre, it doesn't matter. But in terms of power metal itself, they should be as high as Blind Guardian, Ice Turf, and Hammerfall, and some of these other bands, in my opinion.
Yeah, it seems like it. All right, my next one is Within the Ruins. So these guys are a technical progressive deathcore band, more kind of like metalcore too, a lot of influence on their sound. And I just don't understand like why they are not way bigger. Like they could easily be playing shows with the likes of, I feel like Periphery, like they'd fit in with that crowd. I see bands like Rings of Saturn getting tons of credit, and to me, that's just noise. Like this is to me the perfect example of like really technical, flashy guitar work done well with good songwriting, whereas Rings of Saturn is just like it's just like there's no like songwriting happening there. It's just like I find that really irritating, whereas Within the Ruins, they've got the groove, they've got this like certain intensity to them, they've got a very like trademark sound too. Like I can hear just a couple notes of an intro of a Within the Ruins song and I immediately know who it is because they have a very specific like guitar tone, and their songs are just fun too. Like I smile my way through like every track. I love that they're like comic book nerds too, because they did the whole album where it was like all based on different comic book characters. The songs, like they have great openers too. Like I love a band that knows how to open a song, and they have certain albums where like every song has that like live moments where the crowd will go fucking apeshit as soon as they do like the call out or the big riff comes out. And I actually got to interview the guitarist on the podcast, and he's a really cool dude. But again, I see it like even with my own videos, like those just don't get as many views. People just don't seem as interested in them, and I just don't understand why, because they've been around for quite some time. The fan base they have is pretty loyal, but it's still like it should be bigger. It just should be bigger. I don't get it.
I'm trying to remember Within Destruction. Isn't there a cover where there's like this creature coming out and it's got like 10 mouths?
So you're thinking of Within Destruction, which I almost had on this list too. We're talking about Within the Ruins.
Oh, okay.
Similar band name. Yeah, it was funny. And that was part of why I decided not to do both, because they have such similar band name. But Within Destruction is really solid too. I think that they're growing and their fan base is getting bigger. But yeah, they do have that awesome album cover. I have it on the shelf over here somewhere.
I love that album. That's a great album. That's another band, again, I could have put on my list as well.
That's Death Wish, I think, is the name of that album.
Yes, I think so. And they did a new one with like kind of anime-ish.
Yokai. Yeah, so I guess this is like an honorable mention at this point.
Yeah, we're gonna honorable mention.
They're doing interesting stuff too, where like they've really divided their fan base now, because like their deathcore fan base was all in, and then they came out with this new album that has like SoundCloud rap and stuff on it, and some people were not into that, and I thought it was cool for them to evolve their sound. So they're picking up new. It'll be interesting to see where they go from here. Plus, they seem to like not take themselves seriously at all based on their music videos. It's hilarious. I love it.
And that's what you want in a band. You don't want too serious.
Yeah,
or else it just gets boring. Right.
On like to Mr. Patrick from Pestilence, but we don't have to talk about him.
No, it's like He Who Shall Not Be Named.
No, he's the Voldemort of the channel now. All right, who's your next one?
My next one, we were talking about not taking ourselves too seriously, but I'm going with black metal, and we're going with Druid, which I think should be way more recognized than a lot of the other atmospheric black metal bands. I like pretty much all of them, but I think Druid just has a way of doing it just better than everyone. There's maybe a personal bias for this one, but I think over like 11 albums, there's some albums which are more like black gaze, kind of like Alcest, like within what was it called? I wrote it down. Shadows. I think Shadows in the Stars, one where the woman's holding up the moon and star. That one's completely different sound to all the others. Then you got the first album, which is more kind of raw with like 10-minute songs. It's only about four or five songs on it, which kind of repeat passages. So you got that one. Then you got the more beautiful side of them, like Blood in Our Wells and albums like that. So there's a lot of different variety within the catalog. It's not just the same thing over and over again. I think how they do it is just masterful. It's beautiful, but also bleak. And they're one of my favorite bands. So I want them to get more recognition. Not too many people know about them. A lot of people talk about, like Winterfillith, Panopticon, Burzum, obviously. But
yeah,
Druid is kind of lost within that.
Yeah, it's interesting too, because Drudka is like kind of the evolution of that whole tangent of the sound, really. Like Burzum sort of started it, but I consider like Drudka to like
Perfect it.
really perfect it and personify it. I haven't listened to like a ton of their albums, but I like their earlier stuff. I really like Autumn Aurora. I remember when
that's amazing.
I remember when I was first kind of going on my black metal journey, so to speak, and sort of like digging deeper into bands I'd ignored over the years, and I came across them, and that particular album was ranked pretty high on like, I found some site where it was like top 100 black metal albums, and that's how I stumbled on all sorts of stuff. But that one was pretty high, and I was like, oh yeah, this is really sick. And then now anytime I hear like an atmospheric or especially like a post-black band, that's the immediate comparison I hear usually in the guitar sound is with that. So yeah, good pick.
I guess if it was on the top 100, I shouldn't have picked it on my list. But
well, it was a lot of the stuff on that top 100, to be fair, was stuff that was pretty obscure. Maybe. Like Nocturnal. Okay. That's how I found Nocturnal Mortem. And like they're I just realizing like shit, maybe I should have included them, but I'll move on to my next real pick, which was actually a last minute addition that I can't believe that I forgot initially, but it is 6th out of the UK. They are the band that basically perfected the Periphery sound 10 years before Periphery did. Like, it's crazy to think about, because Periphery 1 came out, I think 2010, and these guys were doing this all the way back in the early 2000s. And they're kind of, in a way, like, as much as I love Periphery, and especially like now that they've evolved into like really the progressive elements with like that 20-minute song Reptile that opens up the latest album and everything, Sixth does like even weirder, more experimental stuff, like right from the beginning. Like their first album is very bizarre and has like this great spoken word track called like When Will the Forest Speak, and their vocalist, he does all these voices too, which makes it all the more interesting. So that spoken word, he does like 10 different voices of all these like characters, and then he implements that into the music. And then they have 2 vocalists. Unfortunately, the second one left and now has been replaced on their newer stuff, but he just does like the clean singing, which is just very passionate, whereas Mikey's coming in with all these crazy growls. I was a little irritated when their newer albums came out and nobody knew who they were, because they went on a hiatus after their second album, which was it Death of a Dead Day, which is an amazing album that I think everybody should listen to. But then they came back and nobody had heard of them because they were this like obscure band. And so that people thought it was a new band, and they called them Corncore because they kind of compared Mikey's voice to Jonathan Davis, which I kind of see, like, I kind of get it. But at the same time, it's frustrating because I'm like, oh, you motherfuckers, these guys have been around like they helped kind of perfect that like metalcore gent style of the sound way before it was popular. So they were just kind of before their time. I'm curious if they had come out around the same time as Periphery, if things had been different, but I am at least appreciative that Periphery seem to really clearly wear the Sixth influence on their sleeve. And they even went so far as to tour with them and have Mikey guest on that 20-minute song. There's that weird spoken word kind of growly section about midway through, I want to say, and that's Mikey. And so it's cool to see. Yeah, it was cool to see him pop up on there. And they are just like so talented, so different, so interesting. Their newer album, I wasn't as big a fan of, but it's still really good. Their comeback EP is really awesome. It's like Opacities, I think, but definitely check out Death of a Dead Day, because that whole album is ridiculous. There's a music video for the song Bland Street Bloom, which is the opening track. And it is, if it doesn't knock your socks off, then I will be
I'm not
shocked.
wearing any socks.
Well, there you go.
I have to knock my feet off.
Yeah, I was gonna say the same thing.
That was a good pick. That's a band that I've not explored as much as the other two that you've mentioned. Yeah, I do need to listen to Six more, especially if they sound like Periphery and that kind of. Does it sound like Korn, or is it just?
I mean, it's just the vocals because he does weird things with his voice, like Jonathan Davis does. So
Boom,
there is kind of like he'll do weird stuff, but other than that, there's no other element to their sound that I would say sound like Korn.
Right.
It's basically Periphery with Jonathan Davis on vocals, I guess.
That sounds awesome.
Yeah, awesome. Which it is awesome. It really is.
Definitely need to check them out. Right, my next one, we are going to go for something weird. We're going with black metal again, of course we are. It's Questy. What else are we going to go with? Soc Trillium. This is a project where he's just released so many albums in the space of like a couple of years, and they're all quality. They're all just amazing, and they're all different, spacey, technical. The vocal style is something I've never really heard before. The vocals on Soc Trillium's albums, it sounds like a demon is coming from hell to like sing to you. It's so weird. The only other comparison I could say is Inquisition, but Inquisition's way too gurgly, like way too like frog-like.
The frog vocals.
Whereas this kind of does it, but it sounds like an entirely different beast. And I think everyone needs to listen to Soc Trillium, not only because he's a hard worker and makes a lot of albums, kind of like King Gizzard and the Lizard Wizard, which I love saying, but also because every album is consistent in quality. I think the latest album might actually be the best, which is rare for a band of this. And if they keep going like this, which all their albums are, each album keeps getting better and better, with the culmination of the latest album being the best of the career, in my opinion. People say it's a bit too long. Sure, a lot of his albums, maybe you could trim like a song or two off, but
yeah,
even when we trim them off, those songs are still good. It's just, maybe it's a bit bloated, but I think the band deserves more recognition. They're doing something unique. I've never heard anything like this in black metal, and I listen to like all the new black metal bands as soon as they fucking come out, Black Metal Promotion, Bandcamp, all of them, and I've never heard anything like this. I've never heard anything like Soc Trillium. I've heard some weird shit like Portal, and I've heard some other weird shit like all these atmospheric black metal bands, but nothing ever like Soc Trillium. So I gotta put it on this list because it's unique. I think they should be bigger, and I love them. That's just another reason I'm putting it on this list. Soc fucking Trillium.
Okay. Yeah, I've only listened to some of their stuff, but I've been very intrigued by everything I've heard. And yeah, they seem pretty interesting. And I always like to highlight those bands that are like doing something different, especially in black metal. Because I'm kind of like, yeah, there's so many. And, if they're just doing traditional black metal, especially, it's like, yeah, you guys sound great, but it's like I've heard this 10 billion times before. So like, what are you adding? What are you bringing new? So anytime I come across like a Imperial Triumphant or some weird shit like that, that's what catches my attention. So yeah, it's cool to see bands what's the word I'm looking for? Experimenting and evolving the genre. All right, speaking of which, my next pick, you actually brought up because I'm wearing the shirt, and me, I always like to pump up those underground legends that people don't talk about. This one's a little different because I understand. Yeah, definitely not. I don't think they need my help anyways, nor does my scorn probably matter much to them. But this one's a little different in that I understand why these guys aren't that big, because they only have a few releases. They don't do like a ton of marketing, but they've been around for some time and they're just cool guys and they make amazing music. I really had a great time. I've been conversing with them a bit over the years, but when I had like the whole band on the podcast to talk with them, they are just like the coolest dudes. And it is Torrential Downpour. So you can find their music on Bandcamp. They put out a really sick EP last year called 2020. And then before that, I love the full-length album. It's like a 3-word title that is escaping me at the moment. But in any case, if you take like the Dillinger Escape Plan and then you mix it with like post metal stuff, they said they're big ISIS fans, so that's kind of where that side of their sound comes from. So you like mash up the chaotic insanity. I would even say like the Mike Patton era Dillinger Escape Plan, because that's more of what the vocals remind me of with Isis. Then you wind up with Torrential Downpour. And it's like really cool how they meld the sounds together. They're all super talented musicians, from the drumming, which is super chaotic. Same with the guitar work, is just all over the place. But again, like contained within really impressive songs that are super engaging. It's not like the woodly woo again. It's like super interesting and very proggy at times. They've got some cool electronic elements they pull in. The vocals really run the gamut from this more kind of like haunting, clean singing to the chaotic, again, like Mike Patton-esque screaming, and it's just pure insanity, but it is beautiful. It is beautiful to behold. So that is my big like underground pick and big push. I did a lot of content trying to like push their latest stuff last year because I really think that they deserve it. It's just a matter of like they've got other things going on in their lives too. So I don't think they've ever like fully prioritized the band as like being their number one thing.
Nice. And you're repping it by wearing it. So
yeah.
Double rep. Right. So my next one, my second to last one, we're going to go with, I'm going to pick this one because everyone knows I'm going to mention this one because it's probably my favorite band of all time now. Oh, it's changed. Oh, it's Ahab. I'm always repping Ahab everywhere I go. I'm always repping Ahab. Funeral Doom itself is not a very popular genre. It's probably the least popular genre, in my opinion. More people like black metal. So that as a whole already gives it minus points. But the fact that when everyone mentions Funeral Doom, they don't instantly mention Ahab. They go for the classics, the bands that kind of created the genre and basically stabilized it, like Ferragoffen, who created it, and then you got Mournful Congregation, Esoteric, Evoken, Skepticism. These kind of bands are the bands that always come to people's minds. But I think Ahab's just as fucking good as any of them, if not better. They only have 4 albums, which may be the reason why. It's not a big discography, but each album is just filled with just things that the other bands don't do. The amount of atmosphere and like people speaking passages and then waves crashing on the boats, feeling like you're on the boat about to fight Moby Dick with Captain Ahab. That's what I love about these albums, because they paint a picture in your head when you're listening to it. It's not just slow, drony, doomy kind of music where you're just kind of depressed. It's more like an adventure on all these albums. Like even The Giant, when they're sailing into Antarctica and they're getting stuck in the ice, and the narration is like, all I can see is icebergs for 3,000 miles. You feel like you're there with them. So, it just draws you into the music, unlike some other Funeral Doom bands. And I love all those Funeral Doom bands, but I don't think any of them quite captures my attention as much as Ahab and draws me into the world. So I'm going to rep them again. And people probably expect this on my channel, but for anyone else, yeah, I love them. And I think you guys should check them out as well. Give it a go. If you're going to check out Funeral Doom for the first time, don't check out one of them. Check out Ahab, because it might get you into it.
I'd agree too, because me, I kind of like loathe Funeral Doom. It's sort of like my least favorite genre. I don't, a lot of
people's least.
I always pay respect to, like, it's just not for me is really what it comes down to. But I will say Ahab has been one of those bands that when I do check them out, I'm more impressed than kind of anything else I listen to. Plus their album covers that alone is enough to always like catch my attention each time, where I'm like, okay, I'm not sure if I'm going to like the music, but the cover's so good. It's like clickbait, basically. Like, especially the really colorful one with the weird red, like, tentacle hands.
Oh, that's a great one. That has some short songs on. For Funeral Doom, I think there's like a 6-minute song on there, which is still just as good as the long one. So they don't do stupid lengths of albums and songs, because some Funeral Doom, most as Esoteric, is like 2-hour long albums. Whereas Ahab is generally quite compact. So yeah, I think they're the best beginner Funeral Doom band, and I think they're underrated. So yeah, that's my next pick.
Absolutely. I would back that one. Making some music over there.
Ding, ding, ding.
All right. And then my last pick is one that I just talked about in my metalcore tier list that I put up, and that is Zao. Now, Zao definitely needs to be on this list, because if we're even talking about like the forerunners of the metalcore genre that started it all, it was basically like Integrity, Converge, Earth Crisis, and Zao like putting out the first albums in the like mid to late 90s. And so like they are a huge formative part of the genre. And then on top of that, they put out a ton of albums. And I recently had fun. I haven't put it out yet, but I did a Zao tier list that I'm very excited to share. And it was fun to kind of revisit all that. They've gone through so many shifts in their sound too, and tried different things. Honestly, from the very beginning too, like doing some very different things. They're a lot more sort of experimental, even on some of their earlier albums, like the one with the eyeball on it, like Ex Liberate. It's the Latin titled one. I forget the full title of it, but that one like has this whole weird Event Horizon conceptual element to it, and the music gets super odd. And then they went on hiatus and they came back with some of like their best material still. I think the Well-Intentioned Virus is an amazing album if you want something a little bit more technical and kind of mathcore. And then the latest one that just came out this year that I've been raving about, The Crimson Corridor, is
It's
like
the one with the arm, isn't it? Like
yeah. That one's basically like half doom metal. Like it's like all of their other stuff mixed with like sludge and doom, and it's drearier. It's like their most like dark and depressing and melancholy kind of album. And so they've done so many things, but they've just never like fully gotten their credit. They're one of those names that if you bring it up within like sort of the metalcore elite or whatever, everybody knows who they are. But if just in passing, like people who aren't really into that, they still know who As I Lay Dying is. They know who Killswitch Engage is. They probably know who Converge is and the Dillinger Escape Plan. But you bring up Zao and a lot of people are like, who? Like, who the fuck is that? And I don't exactly know why. They are part of also like the originally, not so much anymore, but like the Christian metalcore scene. But I was even wondering, like, is that part of it? But even some of the big like Christian metalcore and metal bands got pretty huge.
Yeah.
So it's not that either. I don't know what it is. Like maybe it's just their particular sound, because they had sort of a different vocal approach too than a lot of other bands. They didn't incorporate any singing for a long time. Like maybe it's that. I don't know.
Not enough promotion, maybe. They didn't get around enough.
Yeah, it could be.
And word of mouth, I guess, as well, because everyone knows As I Lay Dying and all Killswitch and all those bands like that. But yeah, no, I've not heard anyone aside from you mention Zao.
Yeah, they're really great too, and just they deserve more respect, especially now, because they're just still cranking out
that album
some
was
of their
great.
best and most interesting material of their entire career.
That was a great pick, actually. I didn't think you were going to go that way, but that's cool. I liked Zao.
That's what came out.
My last one, which I swapped with Ahab because everyone knew Ahab's going to be there. So this is the band which I think is the most underrated, but I do think they're slowly getting more popular. I think more people are knowing who this band is over time, and they should, because they're fucking amazing. This band is the Ocean Collective, and they have this is a prog, well, basically just a prog band. So many albums of different concepts, and they're all done masterfully. They have a double album about Christianity. They have an album about the ocean and going through the depths of the ocean, and the songs go deeper and deeper in the depths of the ocean, which is also interesting. Then you got the double album, the one album after the other, Phanerozoic 1 and Phanerozoic 2, all about the beginning of time and like the dinosaurs and the Cretaceous period, and then what happens afterwards. Like there's a song on part 2 where the asteroid hits and the dinosaurs all die, and it's got Jonas from Catatonia singing on it. So
was that the one that came out last year?
Yeah, that's the one that came out last year.
That was on a lot of year-end lists too. So for whatever reason, I just never fully got around to it. I like sampled a little bit here and there, but I think it came down to I was covering so much stuff, and I'm like, I think like every channel has this covered anyways, so I won't feel bad if I don't.
That's why I was kind of, I almost didn't put it on this list for that reason, because they are now getting big, but I still thought they've been underrated for so long because they got so many amazing albums. People need to go back and check out all the other albums and all the concepts they're all based on, because they're all clever. And they recently just had a fossil named after them as well.
So I saw that. That was really neat.
So they are getting bigger, and I think they are starting to rise up in the ranks. So this is a band I guess I'm proud of, that, that they're starting to get bigger, but I think they
They're
should
rising
be
above.
headlining. I think they're just as good as Between the Bear and Me. I'm going to say
Yeah.
it. I think they're just as good as Opeth, which is hard
Wow,
for me
that's
to
a
say.
tall order. Yeah.
And Dream Theater and all those prog bands, they should be headlining because they're almost. I mean, I think they're sometimes better when I'm listening to it, and I'm like, holy shit, all the different passages on this without being wanky, because they're not like that. They're really like completely different to Dream Theater and Opeth in some of those situations. Oh,
Yeah.
I love it, and the vocal style is beautiful as well. So, and they've even got growls in parts, so it's got everything for everyone. And the concepts are cool to look into as well. And it's about cool topics, the whole Triassic period. I love dinosaurs. So yeah, come on, Ocean Collective.
Yeah,
It's my
everybody
number
loves
one.
dinosaurs.
Yeah.
Yeah,
If you don't,
I
you're
wonder.
crazy.
I mean, it's probably partially marketing, but I wonder if it's another case too of like band name, because the Ocean Collective is like not the most interesting sounding
No. And there's
name,
a
if
lot
you
of
ask me.
ocean bands. There's the Ocean, and then there's the
Yeah,
Ocean Collective. It's a bit silly.
yeah. Well, good
Um,
list.
yeah, so I think that does it for our any honorable mentions before we leave.
Oh man, I came up with a few. I mean, I was thinking about Moon Sorrow a little bit.
Oh, that's a good one.
Toke. I even kind of toyed with Vader a little bit because I mean Vader's
Really?
big. Vader's big, but like I feel like they should
They
still
could,
be bigger than they are.
yeah,
And honestly,
I
like
agree.
I recognize that too because it was a while before I even discovered them. Like, you come across all the big stuff from both thrash and death metal leading up to that, kind of with Slayer and Cannibal Corpse and everything. But it
Yeah.
wasn't until like years later that I kind of discovered Vader and was like, oh, who is this? And I'm like, oh shit, they've been around like just as long as any of these other bands, and it's sort of the best of both worlds. You get like the best thrash riffs, but with awesome death vocals, and like, yeah, I feel like maybe they should be a little bit bigger, but they're a lot bigger than any of the bands that we talked about for sure.
That's true. Yeah. I guess I'll do some of mine. I think the band Varg is pretty underrated. They're a cool, fun,
Yeah,
black and Viking metal band, whatever you want to call them. They're fun. Also, I don't know if I can say this band if it's underrated or not. Malevolent Creation. I know the first couple of albums are held in high regard, but I don't know about the rest of the discography.
I mean,
They're
I'm not as familiar with them, so that may be fitting too.
could pick that. And
Yeah.
Dismember, again, people know the first album. They don't know fucking any other albums. So
yeah,
I'll pick Dismember as well for that, just because people latch onto that first album. They do that a lot with death metal. Like the albums come out in 1991, and they're like, those are the best ones. They don't listen to any of the others, even though some of the others are just as good.
Yeah.
So yeah, Dismember's going to be my pick as well. So I guess that does it for this video. Thanks for being on the channel, Metal Trenches. Go check them out.
Thanks for having me.
Any last words?
Yeah, just come check me out, especially if you like being exposed to like kind of weirder, more underground stuff. That's sort of like my favorite thing to do. I do like a best of Bandcamp series where I literally like bands will send me their stuff and I'll just in real time kind of listen to it and get stuff out there so that people can check that out. And then I'll try to tack on smaller bands to even my bigger album reviews and things like that. But then I also do tier lists and interviews when I have time and all sorts of other stuff. So yeah, come check me out and join the Discord too, because we're all on there and we're chatting on there like every day.
Yeah, talking shit about every genre. It's all fun.
Yeah.
So thanks again to being on the channel. Go check him out, and we'll see you again on another Quest for Metal.